When it comes to bold and iconic armor design in video games, none are as easily recognizable as the power armor from Fallout. Whether it's the bulky T-45 or the menacing stare from the advanced power armor, they've all been a staple of video game armor design for the last 27 years. And with a new TV series coming out, I figured it was time to finally see this post-apocalyptic world be brought into our favorite hula hoop sci-fi universe. It's time to Halofy Fallout. Greetings, WERN here. In this episode of the Halofying series, I'm finally taking a look at 5 of the highly requested power armors from Fallout. But before we begin, I want to come clean. I actually haven't played Fallout. But to make sure I respect these incredible designs, as well as the fans of the series, I of course made a significant amount of research, and now, despite not touching any of the games, I'm quite the Fallout connoisseur. And a huge thanks goes out to my lovely Discord mods and my amazing Spartan 2 patrons, for not only providing me with useful information regarding the world of Fallout, but also for their incredible feedback on these designs. I just couldn't have done it without him. A special thanks goes out to Dead Ghost, who was really my Fallout sensei for this project. And of course, LoreKeeper, who once again has provided us with fascinating lore accompanying my designs in the style of the entrenched Fracture universe. And a final note, which is completely off topic, I just released an album on a bunch of different music streaming services. There's really no less douchey way of saying it, but yeah, if you like folk-inspired pop rock songs, I've left a Spotify link in the description. Or just search WERN on your favorite music streaming service. And with that intrusive self-plug out of the way, let's begin. What better way to start than canonically the first operational set of power armor, the T-45. Being one of the more streamlined designs, the bold and smooth shapes give it almost a tank-like appearance. And like with many of the power armors, the inclusion of tubes gives it its defining industrial look. Now to Halofy the T-45, I knew I had to quite drastically change up the proportions to make it make sense on a Spartan. Much more affordable than the Eagle Strike Energized Plate, the Mark 45 is a semi-powered plate armor designed to bridge the gap between humans and their alchemically enhanced siblings. Providing more protection than any standard plate armor before, this armor is hardened by specialized industrial processes that make it naturally resilient to traditional firearms, though it still falls to plasmatron weapons. This specialized bombardier variant is modified for weapon crews, with increased armor plating in key areas and magnetic gloves to help keep control of weapon emplacements. Now, seeing as I'm following the armor customization system from Halo Infinite, this halofication will serve as my base, where I'll attach different helmets, shoulders, knee pads, utility attachments, and chestplate attachments. Now, one of the most important aspects for me to nail down here was actually the chestplate. The simplicity of the original was something I could use as a strength, basically almost bringing it over 1-to-1, but adding additional detail to give it that militaristic look of the Spartans. And I obviously didn't forget about the handle. As for the most notable feature of the armor, the helmet, I wanted to shed light on the fact that this armor was manufactured a few hundred years into the future, so the shapes we see here seem a lot more factory produced, with more intricate details. The shoulders, while reminiscent of the original, were brought back quite a lot, to keep it within the usual size of Spartan shoulders. And finally, the legs and knee pads reference certain details of the original, but all in all, were given a more complex and halofied appearance. While certainly different, the Halofy T-45 is undoubtedly a Fallout design at its core. Let me know what you think of this one. Despite probably not being the first armor that comes to mind when hearing Fallout, the Advanced Power Armor Mark I, which canonically in its earlier form was known as the XO1, is definitely one of the more unique and downright terrifying designs. The two separated eyes and the asymmetrical placement of pipes makes it look truly otherworldly. For this one, I'm mostly going to use the advanced power armor in its Enclave form as my inspiration, but elements of the X01 iteration will be included. The first and last attempt by the Office of Naval Intervention to create a specialized energized plate armor that allowed their operatives the ability to carry out their missions throughout the ruins of Earth, despite the continued mutant presence. Composed of extremely rare metals sourced from a classified dig site in the ruins of Kenya, the armor features incredible resistances to both ballistic and plasmatron weapons, and a triple redundant filtration system increases the chances of the user surviving an encounter with the enigmatic crawling mists used by the enemy. Ultimately, the Type 1 would be largely forgotten by humanity when the Oni headquarters were reduced to a smoldering crater by nuclear weapons. Here, we see a more streamlined and compact chest piece compared to the T-45, with the two separate chestplate pieces being translated quite faithfully. The shoulders and knee pads are, in the same fashion, fairly true to the source material, only being given a more complex makeover. And taking a look at the helmet, we see a more rounded take on the design. But the important components of the original are of course present. The pipes, while not as exaggerated, are still in their asymmetrical manner, and the beak was kept mostly intact, just slightly being brought down in size. The most striking part of the helmet is definitely the eyes. While I was determined that a flat visor and the shape of these eyes were the way to go, my Spartan 2 patrons and Discord mods convinced me to give the bulbous eyes a fair chance, and once I did, I was all in. While not being a common sight in Spartan helmets, this three-dimensional shape for the eyes definitely made sure to keep the frightening look intact. Even though it may not live up to the creepy stare of the original, this take on the design is definitely menacing in its own right. Let me know what you think of this design. The T-51, or the T-51B, is actually the first set of power armor we got from the Fallout game series. So when it came to adapting this one, I wanted to do it right. The Mark 51 is a direct improvement over aging stocks of Mark 45 armors, and even makes use of repurposed assets from its predecessor. Featuring a brand new ablative silver layer, the armor is technically resistant to plasmatron weapons and radiation, but still falls victim to crawling mists. Despite this, it was considered by some to be the pinnacle of human armor, and was issued out to all volunteer Höllentaucher units, with the intention of expanding the scope of deployment to the rest of humanity's warriors. Eventually, these dreams were crushed under the weight of Covenant assaults, slowly chipping away at the United Nations Security Confederation's already shattered industry, and the Mark 51 slowly earned a reputation for being the last great triumph of humanity. The most notable aspect of this armor is without a doubt the color scheme, sporting its iconic olive green, brown, and grey look. I was going to make all these halifications the same color, but once again, my Spartan 2 patrons and Discord mods definitely made the right choice when convincing me to include its defining color. For the helmet, I leaned into the more heavy look of the original, and made this the most beefy one out of the bunch. The visor is one of the defining characteristics of the original T-51, so that I kept mostly the same. In fact, most of the helmet stays true to the source material. I just made it all a bit more tightly packed, I guess you could say. For the chest, I had to come up with some detailing on my own, but I kept the overall shape and made sure to include the straps at the top. And finally, the shoulders and knees, while being given a more futuristic look, still retain their shapes, more or less. While undoubtedly being a simple design, this halification still manages to ground itself in Halo's universe. Let me know what you think of this design. Despite its striking resemblance to the T-45, the T-60 power armor has a personality of its own. It leans a lot more into the walking tank aspect of the armor, and the helmet sorta has this elongated warthog look to it. For the T-60, I had the idea of using the base of the T-45, but modifying it to create a visually distinct variant. Exceedingly rare, even amongst the best human units, the Mark 60 powered combat harness was the result of a classified program to rectify the shortcomings of the Mark 45, and was considered a massive success. Unfortunately for the human defenders, the production of this armor ceased after a devastating attack on Northern Central Command, where the blueprints of the armor were stored. The extremely limited stock of Mark 60 armor meant that it had to be selectively distributed amongst the warriors. Unfortunately, internal strife and disagreements on where the armor was needed meant that almost none saw the light of day, and even fewer the throes of battle. As the lore suggests, the T-60 is built on the base of its predecessor. The chest piece is identical to the T-45 one, but we see the handles being situated on the sides instead of in the middle. The shoulders have been brought down in size compared to the original, but still convey the same overall shapes, including the rings. And the knees are almost ripped straight out of the original. Now, taking a look at the helmet, while similar to the T-45, here I wanted to differentiate it as much as I could. Even though the original versions of these helmets are quite similar, I made sure to exaggerate the T-60's iconic warthog-like shape. I also figured by not giving this one any major black parts around the visor, it would make it a lot more unique. Similar to the T-45 in many ways, the Halofy T-60 still manages to have its own identity. Let me know what you think of this one. And finally, to give the Mark I some company, I want to take a look at the equally as terrifying Advanced Power Armor Mark II. This, just like its predecessor, stands out as one of the most unique looking sets of power armor. The more organic look gives it almost a devil-like appearance. For the Mark II, I had to strike a balance between the organic look of the original and the more practical shapes of classic Spartan armor. Originally, the Advanced Protective Armor Type 2 existed only in technical documentation drawn up by the few surviving Office of Naval Intervention scientists, until a contingent of soldiers became disillusioned with the leadership of the United Nations Security Confederation and broke off to form their own enclave dedicated not to strict adherence to the orders of a long-dead admiralty, but rather to continuing on in the spirit of humanity. The Advanced Protective Armor Type 2 features few improvements over its predecessor, but those few improvements result in a streamlined manufacturing process and much simpler materials used for production, with very little reduction of performance. This enclave of human soldiers made very effective usage of this simplified armor, and soon garnered a reputation among rebel groups embedded within the UNSC controlled areas, with tales being spread of their brotherhood triumphing over all else in battle, though in reality they failed as often as they succeeded. For the Halofy Mark II, I followed the original chest piece and shoulders as well as I could, without leaning too much into the organic look of the original. And for this one, I actually included a utility attachment in the form of pouches to sort of mimic the detail in the waist area on the original. As for the helmet, I kept it as faithful as I could, but made sure to, once again, give it a more bulky and angular design language. The eyes are ripped straight out of the Halofy Mark I, and are therefore bulbous once again. Following in the footsteps of the Mark I, the Halofy Advanced Power Armor Mark II gives us a less menacing, but possibly a more badass version of this armor. Let me know what you think of this design. And there it is. Those were the 5 sets of power armor I decided to Halofy in this video. Which one is your favorite? And let me know if you want to see more of these. Or alternatively, what other universes you want to see brought into the world of Halo. And once again, huge thanks goes out to LoreKeeper for, you guessed it, writing all the lore for this video. And Dead Ghost, who made sure everything regarding the Fallout universe was correct. And also, another shameless plug, if you want to give my music a shot, it'd be highly appreciated, but obviously very understandable if not. Now, I want to thank my Spartan 2 patrons. That one guy, Diehard Cult 3, Ripcorded, Desu, The Lenster 2.0, Code and Wash, Captain Waffles, and Poison Ebony 666. My Spartan 3s, Frog Trudge, Jordan Downey, Rogue Robot Studios, and Azores. And my Spartan 4, Lucas Dre. If you liked this video, give it a like. If not, a dislike. And let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I wish you all the best, and take care. Vernissage, out.